Today, we're ranking every single Star Wars show from worst to best, and I will not be holding back, so let's go. Dead last on the list in the number 11 spot with the utmost disrespect is Star Wars Resistance. Listen, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you guys, I've never seen a single episode of Resistance. For all I know, it could be the greatest piece of Star Wars content ever created, but even at the lowest point of my life, you will never catch me watching the show. I genuinely don't think I've met a single Star Wars fan who's fully watched and enjoyed Star Wars Resistance, so if you're one of those people, please let me know in the comments below because I'd love to meet you. But if you're cultured like me and you refuse to watch Resistance, just drop a like on the video for me. Now, in the number 10 spot, and this is where the list really begins, I'm picking the Book of Boba Fett. To this day, I truly wonder what happened to this show for it to turn out as bad as it did. Boba Fett was one of the most hyped up characters in all of Star Wars, despite having only a couple minutes of screen time in the original trilogy. He had an amazing origin story and upbringing in the prequel trilogy and in the Clone Wars show, which added a lot of depth to his character. And of course, he appeared in the Mandalorian season 2, and in the few episodes that he was in, his character was portrayed perfectly, and genuinely everyone loved getting to see him again after his supposed death in Return of the Jedi. Now, for some reason, even though he was portrayed amazingly in the Mandalorian season 2, his character felt completely different and in my opinion worse in the Book of Boba Fett. And even though most of the people who worked on the Mandalorian, which is an incredible show, also worked on the Book of Boba Fett, the quality and production of the two projects were not on the same level whatsoever. The visual effects, cinematography, action, editing, set design, and the overall writing of the Book of Boba Fett was just sloppy compared to the Mandalorian. Now, the most embarrassing thing about the Book of Boba Fett is that the only two episodes which weren't about Boba were some of the greatest live action episodes in all of Star Wars. Sometimes I forget that Grogu and Din Djarin reunited in a filler episode of the Book of Boba Fett, and then in the second filler episode of the Book of Boba Fett, we got to see Luke Skywalker train Grogu with Ahsoka by his side. Like, who thought it was a good idea to add all of this in the Book of Boba Fett and not in the Mandalorian Season 3? Just imagine the people who watched the Mandalorian Season 2 and then watch Season 3 like a normal person would, without knowing or seeing the story that happens in a completely different show. They get to see the incredibly emotional scene of Din Djarin handing Grogu over to Luke Skywalker, to then watching them back together in the first episode of Season 3 like nothing happened. I know I'm getting a little off track here, but it's just ridiculous. The last things I'm gonna say about the show is that the Power Rangers with the speeder bikes that go 3 miles per hour were stupid and didn't need to be in the show at all. Boba Fett now being a diplomatic ruler didn't make any sense whatsoever for his character, and Cad Bane was completely wasted. This show deserves all the hate it gets, and I hope that Disney listens to the fans and learns from their mistakes so we never get a project like this again. Alright, in the number 9 spot, I'ma pick Star Wars Visions. This show is a pretty 50-50 for me. Some of the episodes in this show were absolute bangers, but a lot of the other episodes in this show were just mediocre. The concept of the show is really cool, and I love that we get to see many different short stories from different animation studios that take place in the Star Wars universe, but what I don't like about the show is that the episodes were 20 minutes long at most. Each studio only gets one episode to create an entire story with new characters and storylines, and all the stories that are told aren't even canon to the greater Star Wars universe, so it's pretty much pointless to watch. I think this show would be much better if the studios were given the chance to create longer stories in either a 4-episode arc format like the Clone Wars or a simple 1-hour-long episode, and the studios would be able to flesh out the stories and characters a lot more, which in return would cause a lot of fans to actually care about the show. Now, in the number 8 spot, I'm gonna disrespectfully pick Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't even know where to start. I could genuinely create a 20+ minute video about how bad the Kenobi show was, but I'ma have to hold myself back a little and keep this very simple. Kenobi was by far the most highly anticipated Star Wars project ever created, right under The Force Awakens. The prequel era of Star Wars was completely ignored by Disney for over 10 years, and after the massive disappointment of the sequels that completely disregarded anything about the prequels, including the characters like Anakin and Obi-Wan, Star Wars fans were begging for a project that focused on the prequel era so that Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor could get a second chance. Now, when the Kenobi show was announced and we found out that Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor were coming back to play Darth Vader and Kenobi, everyone thought it was about to be the greatest piece of Star Wars content ever created, and there was no way that Disney could mess up two of the most iconic Star Wars characters, but we couldn't be more wrong. The writing, visual effects, cinematography, production, and side characters were on the level of the Book of Boba Fett, and to me that is just a disgrace to Kenobi and Vader, because these two are the most influential Star Wars characters next to Luke Skywalker and Yoda. The main things I disliked about the show was 1. All the characters were horribly written and just thrown into the story to create a bigger cast. 2. The Empire was embarrassing and not menacing whatsoever. Stormtroopers were getting knocked out from little smacks to their helmet. They couldn't see Leia hiding under Kenobi's coat. They couldn't hit the rebels even though they were standing point blank right in front of them. We got the Inquisitors that genuinely didn't do a single significant thing throughout the entire show besides argue with each other, and overall the Empire seemed like a complete joke in Kenobi compared to the Empire that we saw in Andor and Rogue One. And 3. The action sequences were not pleasing to watch at all. We got multiple chase scenes with Leia where you got a kid somehow outrunning multiple grown men, including Kenobi, who is a Jedi Master. Every sequence that involved a stormtrooper was terrible with absolutely no stakes. And then we got the fights between Kenobi and Vader, which were unwatchable because of the shaking camera and poorly lit environment. The only good things about the show were the scenes that Kenobi and Vader shared together and the overall story surrounding them, and the show would have been so much better if it fully focused on them. But of course, Disney had to throw in a bunch of random characters to take up time so that they could make it into a Disney Plus show, and it ruins all of the great moments that Vader and Kenobi had with each other. Now, in the number 7 spot, I'ma have to go with The Bad Batch. Listen, I know The Bad Batch gets a lot of hate, and I do got it lower on the list, but I actually think it's a decently good show. The animation and everything regarding the visuals are beautiful. The show is set in a very interesting time period of the Star Wars universe, and the show has some very amazing moments, but the amount of filler episodes that don't move the overall story forward really brings the show down for me. The overall storyline of The Bad Batch trying to get Crosshair back and getting to see Crosshair's perspective of the things he's doing for the Empire are by far the best aspects of the show, and every episode that includes Crosshair is amazing, but for every episode that we get with Crosshair, we get 5 episodes of The Bad Batch going on random Sid missions that don't move the plot forward at all. I always say this, but I feel like The Bad Batch would have been a much better show if it followed the format of the Clone Wars by having 4 episode arcs that focus on different characters during the post-Clone Wars time period. Since the show is called The Bad Batch, it's pretty much forced to focus only on them, and instead of getting many different fast-paced stories that focus on different characters and events in the galaxy, we get some episodes that really move the plot forward, and then we get a lot of episodes that feel like filler. Overall, The Bad Batch is a good show, but the filler really brings it down for me. Alright, we are now at the halfway point of the list, and from this point forward, I consider each of these projects to be amazing, so in the number 6 spot, I'm going with Tales of the Jedi. The only complaints I have about this show is that the episodes were too short and we need longer seasons or episodes to make it better. The fact that my only complaint about the show is how short it was should tell you everything you need to know about Tales of the Jedi. The concept of getting short arcs just like the Clone Wars that focus on any Jedi during any time period is amazing, and the opportunities are endless, and with the beautiful animation style of the Clone Wars and the incredible writing, action, and effects, the show ended up being peak. The 3 Ahsoka episodes were amazing, and they fleshed out her story a lot more even though the episodes were very short, and the Count Dooku episodes were incredible, and it made him a much deeper character than he was before. I feel like Tales of the Jedi Season 1 was a test to see how well a show like this would perform, and that's the reason the episodes were very short and we only got 6 episodes, but I believe that because the show performed very well in the fandom, the next season is going to have more arcs with longer episodes, and that will elevate the show a lot. Now, in the number 5 spot, I'ma put Ahsoka. I really enjoyed the Ahsoka show, especially because she's my second favorite Star Wars character right under Anakin and Vader, and thankfully Ahsoka was not disrespected by Lucasfilm and Disney, and she actually got a good show unlike the Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi. The overall story and the characters are what truly made the Ahsoka show as good as it was. Some of the standouts to me were Baylan Skoll, Shin Hati, Grand Admiral Thrawn, Anakin Skywalker, and of course Ahsoka Tano. The entire conflict that Ahsoka went through, from being burdened by her past and worrying that she might become what her master Anakin became, to then getting a lesson from Anakin and learning to accept her past and move on, was incredible to see, and it elevated her character even higher than it already was. We also got Baylan Skoll, who was an incredibly unique and mysterious character with an imposing presence. We got Grand Admiral Thrawn, who pretty much became the Thanos of the Star Wars universe, and of course we got Anakin, who made an amazing appearance when he taught Ahsoka the final lesson lesson that she needed. The production of Ahsoka was also leagues above the production of shows like Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi, and it's obvious to see when you compare the visuals of Ahsoka to those two shows, because the cinematography, visual effects, editing, sets, and costume designs of Ahsoka were all beautiful and visually appealing to watch. The overall story of the show was also amazing, and there weren't any stupid moments or crazy plot holes that ruined the rest of the show, and it also set up some massive plot points and stakes for the future of the Star Wars universe. Overall, the Ahsoka show was amazing, and it deserves to be near the top of everyone's list. Next up, in the number 4 spot, I'm picking Star Wars Rebels. This is by far the most overhated Star Wars project simply because it's more childish compared to other Star Wars projects, but when you look past the fact that it was released on Disney XD and you actually focus on the story and the characters, you come to realize that it has some of the greatest moments and character arcs in all of Star Wars. Besides the peak moments of the show like the Ahsoka versus Vader fight, the Kenobi versus Maul fight, and Thrawn being introduced, Rebels also gave us some incredible characters like Kanan Jarrus, the entire Ghost Crew, and Bendu, while also giving us OG characters like Vader, Ahsoka, Kenobi, Maul, Palpatine, and Princess Leia, and it also heavily expanded the lore of the Star Wars universe, and it dived deep into the way the Force works. The animation was definitely a step down from the Clone Wars animation, but even with the restricted budget, it still turned out looking beautiful. The action was top tier, the arcs that the characters went through were amazing, and overall, Rebels was an incredible show that gets hated on by a lot of fans simply because it was catered towards a younger audience. Now, we are finally on the top 3, and in the number 3 spot, I'm picking The Mandalorian. I think we can all agree that The Mandalorian Season 1 and 2 are peak Star Wars, but unfortunately, Season 3 was a major step down from the previous 2 seasons. If it wasn't for Season 3, I would have The Mandalorian higher up on the list, but even with a mediocre season, it still deserves to be near the top of everyone's list because of how incredible the first 2 seasons were. In the number 2 spot, and this might be a surprise to a lot of people, but I got Andor. This show is easily the most well-written Star Wars project ever created, and it also has some of the most high-quality visual effects, music, and cinematography out of every single Star Wars show. The production of Andor was so good to the point where it actually looked like a high-budget movie instead of a Disney Plus series. The writing and dialogue is leagues above anything we've seen in Star Wars. All the characters had incredible arcs and a lot of depth, to the point where you could even sympathize with people on the Empire's side. The stakes and tension were very high, the acting was incredible, and genuinely every single aspect about this show was top tier. Yes, the show was slow at some points, but you need to understand that those slow moments were building up the story and characters, so you could actually care for them when the more entertaining moments of the show occurred. The only people I see hating on Andor are either the people who haven't watched the show at all and simply use the excuse that they don't care for it, or it's the people who were complaining about there being no lightsaber fights or Jedi. The people I've seen who actually gave the show a chance all agree that the show is incredible, and if you're one of the people who still hasn't seen this show, believe me, you need to give it a chance. I'm telling you, if every single Star Wars project had the same level of production, writing, and quality of Andor, we would be getting some of the most incredible stories in all of fiction. Now, before I reveal what the best Star Wars show is, I want you all to leave a comment below ranking every Star Wars show from worst to best, and also leave a like on the video if you agree with my pick for the number 1 spot. Anyways, in the number 1 spot, and what I believe is the best Star Wars show, I'm picking none other than the Clone Wars. This show has given us some of the greatest stories and characters in all of Star Wars, and with the beautiful animation style, high-paced arcs, amazing voice acting, emotional scenes, incredible character arcs, and top-tier storytelling, it deserves to be at the top of everyone's Star Wars ranking. If you liked this video, I made another one exactly like it on my channel where I ranked every single Star Wars movie from worst to best, so click the video you're seeing on your screen now to watch it. Seriously, I appreciate all the support you guys have been showing.